Have you ever thought about how many times we relive the past, but in the wrong way? It's not hard to see. Most people, after a certain age, carry a small film inside them. Scenes that repeat, words left unsaid, choices that seemed right but hurt, and regrets that even with time continue to pulse in silence. These are memories that don't just come, they demand, weigh heavily, and sometimes even define who we believe ourselves to be. But what if I told you it doesn't have to be this way? That there's a simple, silent, and powerful way to return to these memories and change what they mean. And more, that this process can in fact transform not only your inner peace, but even the course of your life, even now, even after everything that has happened. The idea seems absurd, almost fantastical. After all, how can one change the past? The facts happened, the words were said, people are gone. But this is where something almost no one taught us comes in. The past is not what happened. The past is what remains within you, and that, yes, can be altered. Neville Goddard, a little understood thinker from the last century, proposed a technique called revision. And it wasn't just a mental practice, it was an act of personal power. For him, consciousness shapes reality, and what you feel about what you've experienced continues to create effects even today. It's as if the past is alive within you, and you could rewrite it if you knew how. But before we go further, let me ask a simple yet unsettling question. How many of your regrets still have a voice within your mind? Perhaps you followed a profession out of obligation, not passion. Perhaps you stayed silent when you wanted to speak. Perhaps you hurt someone or failed to say, "I love you," in time. And these scenes, no matter how hidden, do not disappear. They repeat in the form of guilt, sadness, or that bitter feeling of, "If only I knew then what I know now." And if you do nothing, they remain there. You can change homes, cities, routines, but you carry this invisible trunk with you. And this is where the revision technique reveals itself almost as a forgotten gift. Neville taught something that seems simple but requires attention. Every night before falling asleep, revise your day. But not as a critical observer, not as someone who judges, but as a silent editor who has the power to change the script. He said, relive the scene as you would like it to have happened, feel that it happened that way, and accept this new version as true. It's not about deceiving yourself, but about giving new meaning, to internally remake the moments that left their marks. And with time, these new versions begin to create new feelings, and feelings change everything. Now you might be asking, but if the real event doesn't change, what's the point of imagining it was different? And here comes the most important revelation of this video. Memory is not a static file, it's a living construction. Modern neuroscience of neuroplasticity confirms this. Every time you recall something, you rewrite it. You strengthen or weaken mental connections. In other words, what you feel about the past is not fixed. It's malleable. And furthermore, it directly influences how you feel today. Therefore, when you revise the past with intention and emotion, you are, in fact, updating how that past acts within you. You are cutting the threads that still bind you to pain and making space for something new to emerge. Think with me. How many people do you know who have aged with bitterness, who have become hardened, resentful, who can't talk about the past without getting negatively emotional? They believe time caused this. But in truth, it was the unrevised that remained inside. It was the unforgiven, the undigested, the unhealed. And this does not have to be your destiny, because now you know there is a tool, not magical, not miraculous, but profoundly transformative. Neville's revision does not demand blind faith. It demands presence. It demands that you, for a few minutes of your day, stop and choose to recount your story. And there's something even deeper in all this. Because revision is not just for the day's errors. It can and should be applied to old memories, to those scenes from youth that still squeeze your chest, to those decisions you think you can no longer change. Neville taught that imagination has more power than facts, because what truly creates your life is not what happened, but what you believe about what happened, and that you can reformulate right now. There's no need to wait for an ideal moment. You don't need anyone else, but yourself. And most importantly, you don't need the other person to change, only you. Because when you change the way you remember, you change the way you feel. And when you change that, you change everything. It might seem small, but try it. Tonight, before you fall asleep, close your eyes. Choose a scene from your day or your life that still causes discomfort. Relive that scene, but not as it was. Relive it as you wish it had been. Say what you didn't say. Hear what you needed to hear. See the situation unfold differently, and then feel. Feel as if that indeed had happened that way, and sleep with this new image. It might seem symbolic, even fantastical, but if you do it with truth, you will start to notice something changing within you. The weight will decrease, the pain will dissolve, and regret will lose its grip. And this is where many people go wrong. They try to leave the past behind as if it were possible to bury living memories. But you don't heal what you hide. You heal what you look at, what you touch with intention. And that's why revision works, because it doesn't ignore the pain. It embraces and offers a new version, a version that liberates, that pacifies, that closes cycles. Perhaps now you're asking, but isn't this just an illusion? A kind of lie I tell myself. This doubt is legitimate. After all, we were taught from an early age that truth lies in facts, in records, in what can be proven. But life was never just made of facts. Life is made of interpretations. Two siblings can live the same childhood and hold completely different memories. The same conversation can be remembered with love by one and with bitterness by the other. The question is not what happened, but how it stayed with you. And when we understand this, we realize that the past is not concrete, it is emotional, and the emotional can be transformed. Revision is the courageous act of choosing to give another destiny to what has already been. It's not erasing anything, it's reorganizing. It's like opening an old box in the basement, full of objects you didn't even remember. You can choose what to keep, what to donate, and what to let go. Because what you hold inside continues to have a voice. It continues to shape your thoughts, your decisions, and above all, your peace. And this is where many are surprised. By changing the past internally, life externally begins to respond differently. You relate better, you sleep lighter, you feel less weight on your shoulders, and often without understanding how, certain blockages simply disappear. Neville said something that might sound uncomfortable, but it's essential. You are the author of your reality. Not in a magical or irresponsible sense, but in an internal, intimate, profound sense. What you hold within yourself ends up reflecting in the world you see. Therefore, if scenes of pain, failure, guilt still live within you, it's no surprise that the present carries reflections of this. That's why revision is not just a mental exercise, it's an act of conscious creation. And when done regularly, it begins to rebuild not only your past, but your identity, the way you see yourself, and the way you face what's yet to come. Now let's go into something even deeper. Time. For Neville, time was not linear. And this is not just philosophy. Quantum physics has been debating this for decades. Past, present, and future are not as separate as we believe. When you revise a scene from years ago with true emotion, you are, in a way, rewriting a timeline. Not that of external facts, but that of internal emotions. And it is precisely this line that shapes your current reality. You are not just remembering differently, you are feeling differently. And that changes everything that comes after. There are impressive reports of people who practiced revision intensely. Some managed to alleviate physical pains linked to old traumas. Others restored relationships that seemed lost, even without contact with the other person. And many found peace where before there was only remorse. What did these people do? They dared to look again. They stopped repeating the same memory as a punishment and began to recount it as a cure. This requires courage, because known pain, however uncomfortable, is comfortable. It's familiar. But healing demands movement. It demands choice. And that for many people is frightening. But this is where the most beautiful point of this technique lies. It is yours. It doesn't depend on anyone. It doesn't require exposure. You don't need to tell anyone or ask forgiveness from someone who is gone. You just need a moment of silence, of sincere will, and of active imagination. Yes, imagination. The one you used easily in childhood and which over time was put aside, but which never ceased to be there. Revision is an invitation to rescue this capacity, not as an escape from reality, but as a tool to transform it. Let's pause here. Close your eyes for a moment. Think of a memory that still hurts. It doesn't have to be the heaviest. It can be a small scene, a look, a word, an attitude that hurt you or that you regret having done. Now, rewrite it. Imagine the moment unfolding differently. Feel the new emotion that arises from it. It's strange at first, I know, but little by little, it will take shape. And it is at this moment that something subtle happens. Your body relaxes, your chest eases, and a new perception begins to settle in. You still remember what happened, but now in a different way. And here enters another fundamental point: repetition. Neville recommended that revision be done every night before falling asleep, not only because sleep is a fertile state for deep impressions, but because at that moment your mind is more receptive. And the more you repeat this process, the more natural it becomes, like a new habit, a new muscle being strengthened. Gradually you realize that you can revise not only the day but life, that you can clear old resentments, that you can soften errors that seemed unforgivable, that you can finally find a new way to live with what you have lived. And perhaps for the first time, you realize that regret is not a punishment. It is an invitation, a call to look at what is still open, to recognize that life does not end in facts, but continues in what they mean to you. This changes everything, because it gives you back the power, not the power to change what happened, but the power to change what remained within you. And this is perhaps the deepest freedom a human being can have. And if you still carry scenes from a long time ago, know that it's not too late. It's never too late. Revision does not need chronology, it needs intention. You can revise what happened 50 years ago and still reap relief today. You can forgive yourself and discover that time is not an enemy, that it, in fact, was just waiting for you to choose a new beginning. There's something curious that starts to happen when you practice revision consistently. One day, without warning, you realize that memory that hurt so much has lost its weight. It still exists, but it no longer wounds. It no longer holds you captive. And then comes a feeling that few can describe, but many recognize when they feel it. It's as if a part of you has finally been heard. It's as if, after so many years, someone had said, "I understood." And that someone is you. Because that's what revision provides. It's not just an exercise in imagination. It's an act of internal listening, of reconciliation with parts of yourself that were frozen in time. Most people don't do this. They keep living as if the past were a concrete block, something that can only be accepted. And over time, this rigidity takes over. The person becomes hardened, distrustful, closed off. Not because they were born that way, but because they never had the tools to dissolve the pains they accumulated. Neville Goddard, with his ahead-of-his-time vision, brought this tool. And the most incredible thing, without rituals, without dogmas, without the need for big external changes, just with the courage to sit in silence, close your eyes, and recount. How many family conflicts could have been avoided if someone had learned to revise instead of holding grudges? How many marriages could have been lighter? How many friendships could have been healed? How many parents and children could have understood each other better? But it's important to recognize that it's not always easy. Some memories come with force, others awaken shame, anger, deep sadness. It's normal. Pain, when touched, reacts. But this is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that something alive is there waiting for care. And revision is exactly that. Care. When you revise, you are not denying what happened. You are telling yourself, I can give a new ending to this story. And this, on a deep level, has an impact that goes beyond logic. You don't just change your perception, You change your emotional frequency, and whoever changes that changes their reality. Some say, "But I'm too old for this." And here, with all due respect, I say no, you are not. Because as long as there is memory, there is material to heal. And as long as there is consciousness, there is a possibility of transformation. It doesn't matter if you are 60, 70, 80 years old. Your past still lives within you, and if it lives, it can be revised. How many times have you seen an older person getting emotional about something from their childhood? This shows that time does not erase anything. It just pushes it to the background. But now you have the chance to rescue, cleanse, and finally rest. There is a peace that only comes when you understand that you can live with what you have lived, without needing to suffer from it anymore. It's not forgetting, it's liberating. And this emotional freedom is priceless. It changes the way you look at the world. It changes the way you treat the people around you. It even changes the way you sleep. Yes, sleep changes. Because the mind stops carrying the weight that once took away your peace. And when that happens, even the body thanks you. There are reports of improvement in mood, blood pressure, sleep, and disposition, all because something inside finally got organized. And here's something very important. Revision isn't just about bad scenes. You can also revise neutral moments, those where you felt small, ignored, irrelevant. You can imagine that you were valued, that you were heard, that your presence made a difference. Because deep down, many of our wounds come from the feeling of not having been seen. And when you see yourself, truly something heals. You start to realize that you no longer need to seek external validation, because your own gaze has become enough. And that gaze is the greatest healing tool that exists. Perhaps you've already tried other things, therapies, conversations, prayers. Maybe nothing worked as you expected, and that's understandable. Each person carries their own time, their own rhythm, their own path. But if you've come this far, listening to these words with an open heart, perhaps this is the moment to try something different, something quiet, intimate, something that demands nothing but your presence. Revision doesn't need answers. It just needs you to be willing to imagine again. And over time, this new imagination becomes your new emotional memory. And as we said, that's what shapes your life. There's a strength in taking authorship of your own story. Even if the world doesn't change, even if people don't recognize it, you change. And when that happens, the world feels lighter. Present situations are lived with more awareness because you are no longer reacting with the wounds of before. You are acting from a new place, a cleaner, calmer, more whole place, and that makes all the difference. You can start today. It doesn't require complex techniques. Just choose a memory. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and start rewriting. Do this for a few minutes every night. At first it might feel artificial, but persist, feel, make it real in your imagination. And then observe how you start to sleep differently, to wake up differently, to speak differently. Because when you change on the inside, everything around you starts to change with you. And if at any point doubt creeps in, am I deceiving myself? Remember, there is no deception when what you seek is peace. No one deceives themselves by trying to heal. And you are not denying reality. You are in fact taking a more active role in how it lives within you. This is wisdom. This is emotional maturity. This is perhaps what was missing for you to finally feel at peace with your own story. Now perhaps you are feeling something different, a kind of inner silence, not the silence of emptiness but that of presence. As if, for the first time in a long time, there is a space within you that is not being occupied by painful memories, but by something new, a possibility. Neville Goddard's revision is not just a technique. For those who practice it sincerely, it becomes a philosophy of life, a way of relating to time, to memory, and especially to oneself. It is an invitation to reconciliation, not with others but with the self that was forgotten in so many phases of life. Because all of us, at some point, abandon parts of ourselves, versions of us that made mistakes, that failed, that felt ashamed, and we leave these versions trapped in the past alone. Revision is a way to go there and rescue them, to extend a hand to yourself and say, "It's okay, I understand, I forgive you, and from now on, we go together." And perhaps here lies the most powerful part of all this. When you revise your past, you're not only healing old wounds, you are also re-educating your mind to live the present in a different way, because the mind learns through emotional repetition. And if for decades you have repeated feelings of guilt, frustration, or regret, it is natural that the present becomes a reflection of that. But if you begin to repeat sincerely emotions of forgiveness, gratitude, and reconciliation, the present transforms. Not immediately, not with a snap, but like a sun that slowly rises, and when you realize it, has already brightened everything. There is a beauty that only those who have lived a long time know, that of understanding that the most important thing is not to have lived everything perfectly, but to have made peace with what you have lived. No one reaches the end of life without regrets, but it is possible to reach the end of life at peace with them, without carrying guilt, without needing to prove anything to anyone, just with the silent certainty that you looked within and did what was possible, that you took responsibility for your own healing, and that, in the end, is worth more than any external success, any recognition. Perhaps looking back, you realize that most of your regrets come from moments when you weren't who you wished you had been, moments when you were afraid, when you stayed silent, when you didn't know how to act better. But look closely. You did the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. All of us did. All of us made mistakes based on what we knew. And that's why revisiting these scenes with today's perspective is not deceiving yourself. It's bringing wisdom to what was once just immaturity. Revision is this act of emotional maturity. It is looking at the mistake without condemning yourself. It is understanding and moving on. And if there is still pain, that's okay. Pain also has its time. It's not meant to be forced out, it's meant to be heard. And each time you revise a painful memory with this new perspective, you are telling the pain, "You can go. I have learned what I needed to." And this, over time, brings a relief that no rational explanation can offer, because it is something felt, something known, not with the mind, but with the heart. Many older people live with the fear of death, not because they fear the end, but because they feel they haven't closed all cycles, that they left things open, that there are stories without a period, and for this reason, they live with a restlessness that is difficult to describe. But revision offers a silent way out of this. It allows you to close these chapters, one by one, without needing to reopen wounds with others, without waiting for apologies that may never come, only with the strength of your own gaze. And that gaze, when it is true, is enough. Perhaps you are now remembering someone, a situation that still weighs on you, a conversation that remained pending. Well then, take that with you today. Before you sleep, revise that scene. Rewrite the ending. Say what needed to be said. Hear what you wished you had heard. Feel the relief. And then, let it go. Do this as many times as necessary. Some scenes need to be revised more than once. Others, just once is enough. The important thing is not the time, it's the surrender. And if this video made sense to you so far, then perhaps you are ready to make this commitment to yourself. A simple but powerful commitment that from today on, you will no longer carry the past as a burden. You will carry it as a story that was, and that can now be embraced. And perhaps, in the end, that's what we all seek, the chance to leave in peace, without weight, without a lump in the throat, without choked words, just with the feeling that we lived, we erred, we loved, and we learned to forgive all of it. If this message touched you in some way, I invite you to do two things now. First, share this video with someone you know is carrying a heavy past. Sometimes a simple idea can open a door that has been locked for decades. And second, subscribe to this channel. Here we talk about truly important topics, about soul, time, regret, legacy. Because the more awareness we have, the more lightness life offers us. And the truth is simple, it's never too late to live better with what has already passed.